Welcome everyone, Questini here with a discussion about the launch of World of Warcraft Burning Crusade Classic, how it's been and what can we expect going forward. I'll give Blizzard credit where credit is due. The launch so far has been a great experience. Some issues, some bugs, some server stability issues, but compared to what we expected, the rock bottom expectations that we had, and compared to even the pre-patch launch, or the state of the beta, or Shadowlands, or any other version of WoW that's come out in the last few years, it's been a damn good launch. The servers actually ran. You didn't have to wait in a queue. You didn't have too much lag. Some of it did exist, right? Some issues, some bugs, some glitches, but significantly less than what I expected and significantly fewer issues than pretty much anyone expected. I play on Gehenna's Europe. And if you had told people on this server, considering what we've dealt with in the past and the very issues in the pre-patch itself, that we were going to have a very smooth launch experience with no queues, minimal lag, minimal issues for the most part, they would have laughed you out of the room because things have not been great in the past. And I think my suspicion on this issue is that the reason we've had such a good launch is, one, the developers understood what they were going to be dealing with, understood how many people were going to play with regards to the launch of TBC. If they didn't understand, the pre-patch made them understand how many people are interested in that. And two, the actual higher-ups in the company decided to put forward the resources needed to tackle the issue. Because when it comes to server capacity, server issues, when it comes to queues, when it comes to layers, all that, it's all about resources. It's about increasing the resources available for each individual server. And in the past, Blizzard just didn't want to put down the money to ensure launches would be smooth. They didn't want to increase the server capacity, or they underestimated how many people were going to play. Either way, it might have been developers misunderstanding the situation, or the higher-ups in the company not willing to put the resources down, or maybe a bit of both. Could very well be a bit of both, a mix of both. But with TBC Classic, it feels like the developers are actually trying, and it feels like the people actually running the company, the higher-ups, the people who have the decision-making when it comes to resources, understand that they're not going to get away with this cheap. Like with a lot of remastered versions of games, companies want to do it as cheaply as possible, or these older versions of the game being remade in the modern age, they want to do it as cheaply as possible, like look at Rome Total War Remastered as an example, or some other versions that have not gone down well. But with TBC Classic, the situation is different. Why is it different, you might ask? Plain and simple. Blizzard is not doing well as a company. Shadowlands is a fucking disaster zone. They don't have anything else except TBC Classic until later this year, when they will have some other things, so they need something to be successful. If TBC Classic had been a disastrous launch, that would have been a pretty bad blow for Blizzard's financial situation at the end of this quarter. We know for a fact that they rushed the release of TBC Classic so that their second quarter will look better. Now, make no mistake on this. Releasing TBC Classic when they have at the beginning of summer is going to have consequences. Releasing it the way they did, with some bugs, some issues, is also going to have consequences. But the fact that they put the resources forward to actually have a smooth launch from a server perspective, minus the auction house issue, the auction house lag that some servers have had a pretty bad time with, means that they will have a much better launch than other versions of WoW. And the launch does matter, because it's the one thing that people will judge it by. Regardless, like look at Shadowlands, regardless of what Blizzard does in 9.1, they're never going to have as many people in Shadowlands as they did at the launch of Shadowlands. And they screwed that one up, royally screwed that one up. I mean, sure, pandemic and the impact that's had on development, that's all well and good. But it was also a bunch of bad decision-making on their part of the company and how they handled certain things. So Blizzard, for their own financial benefit, needs TBC Classic to be a success. And that's why I think they've put in these kind of resources. And it's been good. Look, it's been really good. It hasn't been a nightmare questing as I thought it would be. It hasn't been a nightmare logging on. Imagine the fact you can log on at peak hours without a fucking queue. Holy crap. Could we have had that in Classic, Blizzard? It would have been damn appreciated. I think they've also abandoned this fantasy scenario where, people are going to migrate from the higher population servers. No, they won't. Because people want to play with other people. Because people want to play with other people that they know. They want to have a certainty that they'll be able to get in the guild. They want to have a certainty that the materials they want on the auction house will actually be there. Look, there's problems, many issues on higher population servers, but there's also significant benefits. That's why people go to them. And so, you know, and because Blizzard themselves decided to keep the same servers as in Classic, they did realize, I imagine, that these servers were gonna be very populated. That's just how it is. That's where WoW is at the moment as a game. I think some things that they should have done, they should have had the LFG tool that they said they were going to implement. They should have had that in the game, because on these kind of servers, trying to go into the looking for group channel and get anything done is a nightmare, plain and simple. They should have had that, and we do need a better auction house system, or one that doesn't have the same kind of lag issues. I mean, they've improved the auction house, don't get me wrong. They've improved it with some of the changes they've made, but they still need to work on that. So we need those kind of things, and we also need a number of bug fixes, all that. But again, compared to what we expected, compared to the nightmare scenario that we all expected, we were all prepared for. Like on the day of the launch, in my guild, we all pretty much logged in like 4 hours, 4 hours, even longer than that. We started logging in 3-4 hours, 5 or more hours before the Dark Portal was opening, just to ensure we'd be on the server, just to ensure we wouldn't have a queue problem, which we fully expected and then they launched it, and it wasn't an issue really in regards to that. So I guess we were prepared for the worst, and we got, I suppose, the best we could have. As for the actual experience in terms of playing the game, obviously a lot of people went for the dungeon leveling experience and not so much questing. I think this was a mistake on behalf of a lot of people, though. Some questing would have actually been welcome and would actually have been very efficient in terms of XP per hour. But people just wanted to go in dungeons and they wanted to grind them. Not the best experience in the world. I personally hate the dungeon grinding, to be quite blunt about it. Never been a fond of it. Leveling in WoW in general hasn't aged well. For my experience, I went with a mage, a warlock, a shadow priest, and a resto shaman. Probably would have been better to have an elemental shaman and a holy priest instead, but that's the group we managed to scrounge together, right? It wasn't the ideal group. If we had had a hunter, it would have been a lot better in some ways and all that kind of stuff. But what happened in the case of my group? Yes, we did ramparts, we did blood furnace, we got a lot of experience, we got honored reputation with Fralmar, and that, by the way, really helped us, because there were people who just went directly in slave pens, skipped past ramparts and blood furnace, and went directly in slave pens, and they paid the price when they got to 70. Because they then had to farm a lot of reputation with Fralmar from scratch, and that was not a great experience for them, suffice it to say. Leveling isn't just about rushing things, it's also about making the right decisions along the way, but I digress. Then once we were 62, once my group was 62, we went into slave pens, and we pretty much didn't leave after that. I remember conversations people were having before the pre-patch, even long before the pre-patch, months in advance actually at TBC. Like, oh, mages aren't going to be as strong, they're going to be weak, they're not going to be great for dungeon grinding specifically. And then TBC comes out and it's like, bitch, please. You have no idea what you're talking about. It was incredible, even from my perspective, going into a dungeon, going to slave pens over and over again, doing mega pulls of dozens of mobs, aiming down, getting slave pens down to 12-minute runs or something along those lines, even actually getting stuck in for a bit several times over. But here's the thing, that was the most efficient XP per hour we could get. We tried various things. We tried mana tombs, we tried crypts, we tried Cephek halls and all that, and it came down to the fact that it was just the most efficient thing we could do to just farm slave pens until 68. It wasn't great. Doing over 30, 40 slave pen runs, that was fucking crap. I'll say it. It just gets really tedious. If we had had any physical DPS, like a warrior, for instance, or a hunter, we could have done other things that would have been very efficient, but we just had the group we did. And ultimately, our leveling route does depend on the group you have. Some people farmed mana tombs over and over again, or tried Cephek halls or anything like that. Once we were 68, we then start, the most efficient thing we could do was Shadow Labyrinth over and over again. We tried Shadow Halls, but Shadow Halls is kind of bad because there's the first corridor, or some of the mobs in the first corridor don't give XP. Then you have the slimes, which also don't give XP, and you pretty much clear until the first boss, and then you reset, basically, for a very efficient XP. So there's a lot of mobs in Shadowholds that don't give experience. BM, what a joke to do BM for the sake of experience. No, thank you. So we ended up doing Shadow Labs over and over and over again until the second boss, reset. And we also got a good amount of rep. That's one of the things that really contributed to efficiency. It wasn't just like, oh, pure XP per hour. It was also efficiency in terms of getting good XP, but also getting the reputation that we wanted. And then we raided, of course. I wasn't part of the first raid. Prop Paladins are pretty weak with no gear. That's one of the problems. Like, a lot of people have been telling me, oh, I'm disappointed in Prop Paladins. Yeah. They're crap without gear. It's one of the things I've personally been saying for a while. Prop Paladins are the most gear-dependent of all the tanks in order to be effective. Especially to be effective in terms of having good survivability and good threat. We can reach it, but you need something like 500, 600 spell power. 500 seems more reasonable unbuffed, or 700 buffed to be able to keep up with like the Warlocks doing 2k DPS or the Hunters doing 2k threat. But then you get into an issue, and I've seen this with plenty of people across the board, not in one guild or another. A lot of people are thinking, oh, we can just Zugzarg our way. No, tanks actually need to gear for survival if they're going to survive things like Prince, Macferdon, Grohl, Nightbane, especially Nightbane. Nightbane probably is the hardest hitting boss in the entire game right now, because not only does he hit hard in melee, he also has a cleave, and he also can do a lot of damage elsewhere, which drains the healer's mana, so healers are constantly pressed for resources on that particular fight. And then, of course, you got a bunch of people that don't necessarily have the greatest gear in the world, and you're trying to do as many Karazhans as possible. That ends up being a bit of an issue. How is raiding, though? I mean, people would say, oh, it's been very easy because X number of guilds cleared content very quickly. Yeah, X number of guilds with full Nax gear cleared content quickly. That doesn't mean it's fucking easy. In fact, in point of fact, it's quite the opposite. You can't just zug your way, you have to actually play mechanics. Yes, a guild-like progress is going to clear everything in less than 2 days. How are they going to do that? Simple. They're going to exploit the questing experience bonus that they can get in Classic. They're going to do everything in their power to get as much of an advantage early on as they can. And I don't know if they did, I admit I didn't follow them. But I absolutely assume that they took advantage of quest earn-ins before they ventured into Outland. And then they're going to find something, anything, that they can take advantage of to get quickly. And yeah, a fully Nax-geared raid is going to smash its way through Karazhan, Gruul, and even Macferdon. Because they did, even back in the day. Like, keep in mind this, guilds weren't anywhere as hardcore back then as they are today. They weren't planning things to this insane level. And yet still Gruul and Nightbane were dead within 2 weeks of launch, of the actual retail launch of Burning Crusade back in the day. Again, people didn't have the computers, they didn't have the skills necessarily, they didn't have all that. And yet still guilds with full Nax gear. Macferdon was an exception, but Macferdon was an exception because of various other issues as well. Part of it was bugs, part of it was tuning that people weren't prepared for. Like, Macferdon was a significant increase in difficulty compared to pretty much anything else that people were dealing with. So he stood alive for quite a while, but the idea that in this day and age, any of these bosses to a well-prepared guild with full consumables that's willing to spend thousands of gold while leveling on grenades and consumables alone, the idea that this content would survive, no, it wouldn't. And that's kind of the problem in only having tier 4 at launch, because the real raid content of launch of Burning Crusade isn't Gruul or Mag or Nightbane or Prince. It's Kael'thas and Vash. That was the case on retail. That's how Blizzard designed the game, their very own game. They released both Tier 4 and Tier 5 at the same time for a damn good reason. And that reason was the real raid challenge was not in Karazhan, was not in Gruul, was not in Mag. It was in SSC and TK. The fact that you removed that, yeah, no shit, people are going to clear the content very quickly. Now look, for my part, I both hate this and I like it. I like it in the sense that I can actually rest a bit. I don't have to push myself for 2 months every single day to a maniacal level because of the guild I'm playing in. I like that. I'm fine with that. I'm fine taking a more chill. But what you end up with is an experience that's similar right now. The TBC Classic is similar to what RAF was when it originally came out. That you had all those Sunwell geared guilds when RAF came out, just smashing through the raid content with ease. Great ease. Everything except Sarfari and Free Drakes. And even then, that didn't stay alive for too long, except Free Drakes 10-man. That was an exception, though. The only exception. So you have a situation where there's a lot of shit that you just pulverize your way through. That's simply how it's going to end. So I hope people enjoy that the decision that Blizzard has made with regards to delaying Tier 5. Plenty of people asked for it. Some people asked for it because of concerns over PvP. Other people asked for it because, there's too much content at the start. Yes, sure. TBC is very front-end heavy. That's absolutely the case. But I give it a month, give it 2 months, and I think a lot of people are going to end up being very bored, right? They're going to farm everything, even the more casual players, right? Like, the more hardcore players, they were done within a few days, or a week at most, with most of the things, 90% of the things they needed to do. The more casual players, give them a month, give them 2, whatever, maybe even longer, but then that's it. And then what? And then what do we have to do? Split raining. Ooh, woohoo! That's fun. That's if there's an issue with TBC Classic so far, it's that. That's the one issue that I do have. Because you can't expect Tier 5 to come out soon, because they've tied the arena seasons with the tiers, right? So we're going to have to wait for the entire arena season to even start, finish, and then for Tier 5 to come out. So enjoy the wait. It's probably going to be by the end of summer. That said, releasing Tier 5 would have had its own complications, because clearly Blizzard rushed the release of TBC Classic in its entirety. So if they can't get everything ready in Tier 4 completely and they still have plenty of bugs and glitches, the idea of releasing both Tier 4 and Tier 5 at the same time, well, that probably would have been beyond Blizzard's current capabilities, the current resources that the development team on TBC Classic has. But I do think there's going to be problems. I also think there's going to be a problem, though, in terms of how the community has been treating raiding in Classic, where it's like, we're just going to zug and we're going to smash for the content. Yeah, people need to reorientate. People need to relearn in a way to play the game on all levels. Like, we're talking here from the most hardcore players to the more casual players. People are going to need to adjust, because some of the things that people have done in Classic are not going to fucking work in TBC. Or they might work in Tier 4, but they're probably not going to work in Tier 5. That's the thing. Or if you pull it off, you're going to... or you might be able to pull them off, but you're going to need to put in a lot more effort into managing those kind of things. For me personally, I've enjoyed it to a great extent. I admit there are certain frustrations I do have with it, especially as a paladin tank, because you're just useless with no gear. Like, you're the weakest tank with no gear, and it's hard to get good survival, and it's hard to get good threat and get a good mix and match between the two of them at this particular point. But that's just starting issues. Those things will resolve themselves in time. But anyway, that's pretty much all there is to say right now. Christine signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.